be down. The tourist. In the flesh. Oh, stories about you been buzzing all over the bayou.
When it first came out in 2020, The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners was rightly lauded as one of the best virtual reality games out there. This extended from how reactive and interactive the world was, to the weighty motion controls for the zombie battling in its heart, and importantly just how scalable it was so that it could cater to standalone VR, PC VR, and the original PlayStation VR, all while looking pretty damn good. Now, this game is out on PlayStation VR2 alongside its sequel, the awkwardly named The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners Chapter 2 : Retribution. And this upgrade to the original game, as well as the sequel, looks to take advantage of all of the raw power of the PlayStation 5 and the capabilities of the PlayStation VR2. So how is it done? Well, first things first, let's talk about the upgrade path. Skydance originally said that all users would be able to upgrade for free, even PlayStation Plus subscribers that managed to grab the base game as a freebie back in 2021. That story eventually changed though to being just for those who own the Tourist Edition, which is an additional £8 or $10 DLC if you have that standard edition. Though it was recently on sale for less than $3, so keep an eye out for that if you are thinking of going down this path. Neither of those prices are too unreasonable in my mind, though it is a disappointing backtrack, and then the rollout of this game has been a bit messy looking on Reddit and social media. Some people have bought the PS5 version of the DLC, or the disc version of the game doesn't have a path to upgrade at this time. So if you've not yet jumped in and you do need to pay some cash, make sure to double check online to see what other people's experiences have been doing this and what version of the DLC you're buying. Now let's get stuck into this comparison, and as always we are comparing the HDMI output and what you'd see on the TV for the capture of this game. It's always really interesting to see how this is rendered, with the original PSVR outputting a rounded render of the world, fisheye lens and all, and that's literally just one half of the two-eyed view that it's creating. And while PSVR2 does the same thing, it actually puts out a more refined rectangular 16:9 image to the TV that looks a whole lot sharper but still shows a lot of periphery. But in both cases, this isn't 100% representative of the experience that you get in VR. What it can do is just give you an idea of the improvement that you're getting here. In general, Saints and Sinners actually holds up really quite well on the original PSVR, thanks in large part to the strength of its art style and that inherent scalability of the game. It is fair to say that it's still going to suffer from the headset's 1080p screen resolution, and so reading the item details and the text from a little bit of distance can feel a bit rough at times. When you're at the crafting table, for example, and want to figure out which recipe you need to grab. It is a world of difference in that regard when stepping up to PSVR 2. The much higher resolution makes things much more readable, and in general it gives a greater sense of solidity to the world that I feel. I will add that I do think that the animation work has taken a step forward from Chapter 1 to Chapter 2, but that is something that we're not really going to delve into with this video. Now, on PSVR 2, there is still some of that Mura effect, this subtle colour unevenness that comes from the OLED panel and is mostly present in darker and dingy environments. But it's also fair to say that that is something that has never really bothered me while playing any PSVR 2 games. I'm always focusing past it to look at the world and the environments that I'm experiencing. Upgrading to PSVR 2, you also have those significant advantages in terms of motion tracking and just how you play the game. The problems of PSVR 1's camera-based visible light tracking solution are very well documented, and while good for many VR gaming situations, there's an inherent limitation that they have that can affect the games that you're playing. And then you're also playing with a Move controller which lacks the analog sticks, and this forces developers to perhaps get a little bit creative for moving around in the world. In Saints and Sinners, on the original PSVR, you're pointing and you're holding the left move button to get around, and you're then using the buttons on the right controller to turn your view. On PSVR 2, well, it's analog sticks all of the way, and that will be common ground to pretty much every free movement game on this new generation of headset. Movement is very deliberate in this game. You go slowly by default, probably too slowly because you're not really that much faster than a zombie. But then that emphasises that sprinting and moving quickly will drain your stamina, which you have to manage with food alongside your health management. As you're playing, there's the usual vignettes built into this game for this, and you can adjust those to your liking, since to me they felt pretty heavy-handed by default, which is kind of what you're seeing here. And this is something that's really accentuated by the widescreen HDMI capture on PSVR2 because it's showing a lot more of that rendered peripheral vision. With the world, the setting and the movement you have available to you, combat also has to be pretty deliberate. Melee combat is pretty intensely physical, whether it's a knife or a screwdriver needing that second shove to get into a zombie's brain, chunky axes that need two hands to steady and aim, or pushing a zombie back to get them away from you. Motion really wants to be quite broad and smooth instead of sharp and fast, and it's also slightly disconnected at times as your physical motion is remapped to the constraints of the digital world and what you're interacting with. You might try to pull an axe back out of a zombie head, but it's sticky in the game in a way that feels a little bit strange because you just move your hands freely in reality. That's just part of the game, and you do get used to it pretty quickly though. Given that it wants those broader movements, you can still move a little bit too quickly for PSVR2 to feel completely accurate, though I do think that it's a bit more accommodating in that regard compared to PSVR1. Another setting or feature to bear in mind is that the grip button by default needs to be held whenever you hold something in your hand, and that can be a little bit tiresome, but is thankfully something that can be turned into a toggle in the game settings. You don't want to be accidentally dropping and losing that weapon when there's half a dozen zombies bearing down on you. On the flip side though, this does make using throwable items in the game, such as making a Molotov cocktail, it does make those feel less precise. And also, since this is a fully physical inventory system, you can sometimes accidentally grab a gun off your belt and then drop it while climbing over a wall, for example, which I might have done. All in all, this is a great upgrade for Saints and Sinners onto PlayStation VR 2. It makes use of the higher resolution, you've got improved visual effects as well, such as that fog that I mentioned, and in general, the motion tracking and the interactions with the game can feel much more reactive and responsive thanks to the Sense controllers. Moving around with the analog sticks is always a delight when compared to not having those on the Move controllers. This really still holds up as one of the best VR games out there. That's all that we've got for this video, and I hope that it has given you a pretty good look at the upgrade from PSVR to PSVR 2 within Saints and Sinners. If you have liked what you've seen, then make sure to like, subscribe, share, all of the usual YouTube things, and hopefully you will stick around to check out our other PlayStation VR 2 videos which have gone up over the last month or so. Hopefully we will see you again soon. Goodbye!